A company called Aorato. I want to tell you a quick background story on how we founded the company before I will introduce the company, because it's kind of an interesting. Back in 2010, I did the penetration testing in one of the biggest banks in Israel. They hired me for 2.5 weeks just to show them what an internal employee or an attacker can do inside their network. So they didn't give me any specific goals and any specific tools. They just told me, sit here and show us what you can do. So to do that, I had to build my attack path internally very, very quickly, and I was thinking, how can I get from which source I can get the information to be able to build my attack path. And then I realized that Active Directory, everyone knows what Active Directory is? Okay, great. So I understood that everyone has access to Active Directory and everyone can get the information from there, and it's totally legit. So I went there. I took all the users, their titles, the management hierarchy, the phone numbers, emails, group memberships, permissions, and other very, very useful information. And I started doing some manually data mining to be able to fake or build my attack path from this information. And then I realized, after less than 30 minutes, I realized that this bank had more than 300 and something least privileged accounts that were used for test accounts and POCs accounts, that nobody changed their password for 1 year or 2 years. So I decided that I will start and attacking the least privileged users inside the organization, because nobody pays attention to those users. So I started brute forcing their passwords against the Active Directory, because Active Directory stored all the information and all the passwords. And in less than 2 hours, I had 4 accounts and their passwords. And my next step in the attack path was to log into a workstation where the privileged accounts logged in before, to be able to steal his identity from the computer and not from the Active Directory. To make a long story short, in this case it's a game over, because when I had basically the identity of the domain admin account on one of the computers, I managed to access resources on his behalf without knowing his password. So this incident made me realize that Active Directory is the Achilles heel of the entire security architecture, and if you can watch him in a special way that I will present today, you can identify abnormal behaviors of users and computers, like password sharing and identity theft inside the organization. And so this is how we founded the company. I will talk a little bit. We raised around $10 million from Excel partners, from Eric Schmidt from Google, and from other very respectable investors in the security industry. And we have a very strong advisory board from security companies and others. So before I will talk about the Active Directory himself and why it's exposed, I want to say that we basically brought the social concepts into the enterprise security, and I will explain how we did it. And when you will see the system, you will see basically a social network inside your network that builds an automatic profile on each one of the users, the computers, the resources, to be able to identify the abnormal activity. So 3 main common scenarios that we are doing every day. The first one is that we are logging into our computer, right? So we are coming to work, entering our username and password, and our computer is going to Active Directory to authenticate the user and his password. Next, what we will do is we will start working, access resources, maybe open our Outlook or go to the file server. And everyone thinks that when you access the file server, for example, and you can see your files, so that's it, it's a magic. But behind the scene, the computer is going to Active Directory without your knowledge to access or to request authorization for this resource, which means that the Active Directory can see not only the authentication, but the authorization and other very useful information. So remember the single sign-on. And the last one, the last common scenario that we are doing is reading emails. So everyone that reads emails basically authenticate under the hood to Active Directory, and not only the user is authenticated, but also the computer, or sorry, the device that you are using is also authenticated against Active Directory. So we have a proof of concept of a malware that run on one of the mobiles and managed to bypass all the security architecture in the organization and perform account enumeration and brute force against the internal Active Directory from the internet. So, 3 marketing slides, or attacks in the wild. So I guess everyone heard about the attack on RSA. The source code was stolen. So Active Directory was involved in the entire attack. Basically, the malware went to Active Directory to get the relevant information of the users that had the permissions on those specific servers, and then stole their identities. And I just copy and paste from the New York Times. This is what the CISO said, that the domain controllers were breached, and account information was taken, and identities was stolen, etc. And the last one that everyone heard about is the target attack. And again, the target attack, the entire attack flow was through Active Directory, and they stolen an identity of a domain admin account and spread all over the network and stolen the 40 million credit cards. So what we are doing, I think after deploying security solution for the last 8 years of my life, I wanted to bring the customers something that they will not have to invest any time configuring the product, and zero time maintaining the product. So we are a virtual or a hardware appliance. We sit alongside, if this is the network, and this is the LAN, the local area network, and this is the ZMZ, and this is the server farm, we are sitting alongside Active Directory without any agents, without any configuration. Active Directory doesn't know that we exist. And from the moment we are analyzing the traffic from the entire network to Active Directory back and forth, from that moment what we are doing, we are learning all the entities. For example, I'm a user, I logged into a computer, then we will learn the user, and we will learn the computer, and we will learn the connection between him, which is interactive login. And then we will get more context about the user. What is his role in the organization? Who is his boss? Who are the people that reports to him? What are the groups that he belongs to, and etc. And I will show it to you in a second. The second thing that the product is doing without any rules and without any policies, without any configuration, we are building a dynamic profile. Think about Facebook, for example. In Facebook, you are creating your own profile. Here, we are creating the profile automatically, and you will see it looks like Facebook, because the second thing that we are doing is we are building an interaction graph between all the entities. And if you will take, I'm going back to Facebook, when you will post a picture or press like on someone or add me as your friend, Facebook will create under the hood, will create the interaction graph to be able to search very, very quickly, and to present you, of course, advertisements that you don't want to see. So we are doing it from a security perspective to be able to find abnormal behaviors of entities in the organizations, unknown malwares, password sharing, and other attacks that I will show you. The last thing that we are, not the last thing, before the last thing, what we are trying to do is tell you a story. We will never issue one single event that doesn't explain what we found. We will always try to aggregate between suspicious activities, and I will show you the demo, to be able to tell you the story behind the attack. And the last thing that we are doing, we are putting honey tokens, which is kind of a traps inside Active Directory to mislead the attackers. So for example, you have fake users and fake computers that if someone touches them, then they are getting a higher score, and the algorithm watch them differently from the other well-known users. So I will go to a quick demo. I'm good with times. So from the moment you are configuring the system to listen to the traffic to Active Directory, you don't need to do anything else. You are just browsing through the system, logging in, and from that moment, you will have, everything is automatically, of course. You have only the attack timeline that tells you the story. And you have a notification bar on, for example, let's take this one. So you can see that entities learned today, 1 domain, 2 domain controllers, users, computers, groups, printers, that we are learning automatically. And I'm saying automatically because I want to emphasize that you don't need to configure any rules or policies behind what you see right now. So let's take, for example, even if we didn't detect any suspicious activity at all, we are still able to search all the entities that we learned, all the profile that we created. So let's take me, for example. Let's take my profile, and everything is taken or from the traffic or from the Active Directory. So what we can see here, that I'm a sensitive account. I have 4 suspicious activity, 3 high and 1 medium. I can see the groups that I belong to, the activities, the resources that I accessed, the computers that I logging into, and information about my passwords. For example, I can see that my password is never expires, and when I was last failed, and the colleagues inside the organization. For example, I'm managing Michael, who is the VP R&D. But what I wanted to show you is that when I said that we are aggregating the suspicious activities, so in my timeline, I can see that, let's start from the end, I can see that we detected a reconnaissance using account enumeration, which means the suspicion of account enumeration entity using specific protocol was detected. We can see from where, how many users are exposed, and we have a recommendation for each one of them. Next is, we found, after the reconnaissance, we found out that someone stole the identity of this specific account, which is me, through an attack which called pass the hash. This specific attack was the same attack that was involved in RSA, New York Times, and the Target attack. And then what you can see that on the timeline, after I think a few days, I will leave it, but you can see that we have a suspicion of identity theft based on abnormal behavior of authentication and resource access. So you can see that I logged in from this computer, and I also logged in from 6 abnormal computers, and I accessed 5 abnormal resources that are basically abnormal to my behavior in the past month, and they are also in an abnormal way to the colleagues that belongs to me or work with me inside the network. So the last thing that I want to show you is, I will go back to the summary. You can see that, for example, I'm a member of the domain admin account. This is why I'm sensitive account. You can see that we are tracking, and it's very important to say it again, because we are tracking the changes of all the entities in the organization and all the groups, but without any agents on the domain controllers. So we are analyzing the traffic and going to Active Directory to maintain a state, to be able to understand that someone was added to a group, did something malicious, and then removed from the group, and this kind of a story that we can detect. That's it. I'm done. 10 minutes? Great.
Perfect.
Questions? Yes?
Yeah, so how do you surface the story that somebody would need to know, right? So I think about IBM, there's 400,000 people, and I, for example, have 3 devices. That's a lot of information that's being generated. How would somebody that needs to know that? Or know that I'm doing something that I should be knowing?
So this is a system for security security teams for the SOC, basically, and they are getting the alerts and analyzing, if it's basically, if we alerted something, then it's wrong. And then they are taking the actions. Now, what we are doing next in the system is we are able to block the authentication request. So you can, if someone stole your identity from your device, so you will be able to log in, but not him. So we are doing some nice thing around the protection area. Yes?
On your existing base of customers, how often does that happen? How many real attacks do you see?
It's a great question. So we divided the product into 3 categories. The first one are security issues, like service account exposed these passwords in clear text over the network. So in security issues, for example, in 100% of our customers. Attacks we found in a few. It's under NDA with them, but we found few attacks out there in the wild, but not in all of our customers, of course. Yes.
Obviously, most AD directories are on-premise. How does your approach map to Azure Active Directory?
To Azure?
Yeah.
So I can't talk about it right now. Okay. It's under development, but maybe we can take it offline. And but just so you will understand, we are focused right now 100% on-prem. Okay, our customers are the large enterprises, the financials. They are not going to the cloud in the near 5 years from now. So.
Yeah, from a attack surface perspective, it makes perfect sense.
Right.
To focus on,
yeah. Yes.
If you're familiar with a company called Tanium, they install an agent on basically every endpoint in the network.
Okay.
Your product just stays just alongside Active Directory.
Yeah.
And it only surfaces attacks that are on Active Directory or LDAP.
This is.
How does it actually figure out what's happening? Like where you came, like you had your computer connected that was through Active Directory, that attack.
So the thing is, it's again, in the common scenarios that we are doing every day that I presented, for example, if you will access a resource or the attacker will use your identity to access the resource to steal information, under the hood, it's going through Active Directory. So we are right now, security, it's not 100%. You have layers on layers on layers. So you have an endpoint solution and you have other solution for different attack vectors. So we are right now focused only on all the things. We are saying that 80% of the traffic in the organization goes through Active Directory. All the attack, 100% of the APTs, the advanced persistent threats, are involved in authentication and authorization and stolen identities and others. Take Snowden, for example. Everyone knows about Snowden. So we did stupid thing. He convinced his colleagues to get passwords, and he used their identities to access resources. So those things, that we are focused on those things. This is the attack vector that we are focused. No, ask.
So in your very first picture, when you had the network,
yes,
right? If I am trying to access Active Directory, I log in. I'm probably on-prem already, right? So,
right.
Are you suggesting that you're protecting more people who are able to penetrate the firewall coming into the network and accessing? Because I found it's not state of mind. It's what happening in the real world. We know that the attacker is already in. This is our starting point. We are not dealing with with spear phishing and email, other things. This is again, these are when you are a startup. I guess everyone knows it here. You need to be focused on something and be the best in what you are doing. So this is why we chose this blind spot that 95% of the organizations worldwide are using Active Directory. Right.
Yes.
How can you detect password sharing?
I'm sorry?
How can you detect password sharing?
It's how we can detect it, the password sharing. It's very interesting. We are looking this is the part of the behavior. For example, we know what are the computers that you are logging into often. We are looking at your role in the organization and sees how other similar
role members are interacting with other computers, and the resources that you access make sense to your role in the organization, and other very interesting stuff. Yeah, that's it. Sorry.